Welcome everyone. This is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, Book 1, Chapter 5. We have cause to be uneasy. C.S. Lewis ended Chapter 4 with the idea that in the moral law, somebody or something from beyond the material universe is actually getting at us. So he was talking about the difference between what we ought to do versus what we actually do, because they do not match always. And he also said it's not about giving you another religious jaw wrapped in some kind of philosophical conversation. We shouldn't be too skeptical about this approach because he just wants to talk about the truth and see how we come to a conclusion based on that discussion. So for those who may feel that way, he said three things. First one is about progress, which means we want to get nearer to the place we want to be if there's any ideal place. However, if you take a wrong direction, going forward will not get us any nearer. In fact, we may move away from the final destination that we want to go. So he said the sooner we admit this, the faster we shall get there. So that means we have to acknowledge wrong direction and change it to the right direction. There's nothing progressive about being pig-headed and refusing to admit a mistake, which is a valid point, in my opinion. For those who may feel that way, number two, for that somebody or something, he wants us to consider two things. The first thing is the universe. By looking at the universe, by observing how it works, it looks amazing. So he said the creator must be a great artist, but if you actually go out into space, we all know that's a very dangerous place. So he must be merciless as well. Second one is the moral law. The creator put this in our minds. We did not create this one. We did not learn from the society. It's not something that we created based on any systems in place. So it gives us a better clue or evidence about this somebody or something because it has more than just pure facts that we can observe. So let's call this someone or something as God. For more information, please read last line on page 29 to line 17 on page 30. If an absolute goodness exists, it must hate most of what we do because, as we discussed in the prior chapters, the moral law versus what we actually do, what we ought to do versus what we do on a daily basis, there's a difference. We're not meeting that absolute standard or absolute goodness. And if the universe is not governed by an absolute goodness, all our efforts are ultimately hopeless or meaningless. If there's no absolute goodness out there, then what's the point of what we do on a daily basis? Why do we have to be nice to other people? Why do we even have to think about the benefits of the society that we live in? But if there's an absolute goodness, if it exists, then we are making ourselves enemies of that goodness every single day. Because what we should do, that's absolute goodness, and what we do, they're not the same. He basically said, since our behavior will not change or become better tomorrow, what we do become meaningless again. So what shall we do? We see some problem here. So the life is meaningless. Let's not stop there, and we're going to go through these questions in the future chapters, but this is something we have to think about at this point. The third point he made was there's no reason to consider any religious idea until after we have realized that there is a real moral law. So we have to agree that there's a real moral law. To come to that conclusion, you need to go back and revisit chapters 1 through 4. And a power behind the law. And that you have broken that law and put yourself wrong with that power. So if there is a real moral law, absolute goodness, and there's a power who created that moral law, we are actually breaking it every single day because we do not meet that absolute standard. So after all these, if we agree on all those things, that Christianity begins to talk. So he put it this way. When you know you're sick, you will listen to the doctor because they will tell you what needs to be done. Until that point, you don't have any reason to listen to the doctor. So what does Christianity offer? Number one, it offers an explanation of how we got into our present state and how God can be this impersonal mind at the back of the moral law and yet also a person. Very complicated question here, but he will unpack this in the future chapters. Number two, it will tell us how the demands of this law, the absolute goodness, which you and I cannot meet, because the way we behave is different from this law, and how it has been met on our behalf. Conclusions. He's suggesting us this. Let's face the facts and understand the questions which Christianity claims to answer. Instead of shutting it down before we hear anything about Christian value, let's take a look at this reasonably and logically. And the second thing is, he wished it was possible to speak something more agreeable or pleasant, but he said he must say what he thinks is true. And third point is, the Christian religion is, in the long run, a thing of unspeakable comfort, but it begins in the dismay he has been describing. So comfort and dismay, but dismay first. He said this, if you look for truth, you may find comfort in the end. But if you look for comfort, you will not get either comfort or truth, only soft soap and wishful thinking to begin with. In the end, despair. So initially we may go through some painful discussions and thinking processes and a lot of questions and answers, which is necessary to get into this comfort that we are looking for. So that's it for today. And please leave your questions and comments under the video. And this video actually concludes Book 1, chapters 1 through 5. So I will see you in Book 2, chapter 1. Thank you for watching.